The elevator doors slid open on the 42nd floor of Hastings Corporation, revealing its sleek marble lobby. Nathan Hastings, CEO, Billionaire, the man featured on the cover of Forbes just last month, stepped forward with his usual confident stride, already mentally reviewing the acquisition terms he'd finalized in Tokyo. He froze. Standing 15 feet away, beside the reception desk, was a woman he hadn't seen in 5 years, Claire Morgan. But it wasn't Claire who stopped him cold. It was the 3 children clustered around her legs. 3 identical faces, 3 pairs of unmistakable blue eyes, the exact shade as his own. One child looked up at him, then another, then the third. Nathan's briefcase hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed through the lobby. We need to go back. Not to the elevator. That comes later. We need to understand what brought Claire to that moment, standing in a lobby with 3 children who would change everything. 5 years earlier, on a Thursday afternoon, Claire Morgan's world collapsed in less than 10 minutes. What she built in those 5 years would change everything. Her life, Nathan's empire, the entire corporate landscape. But first, she had to lose it all. First, she had to walk away from the only man she'd ever loved, carrying a secret that would reshape both their futures. For 18 months, Claire Morgan had been living a double life, and she'd been extraordinary at both. By day, she was the youngest senior analyst at Hastings Corporation, the woman who could spot market trends before they materialized, whose insights had revolutionized their entire investment strategy. Department heads sought her opinion. The board quoted her reports. By night, and in stolen moments throughout the day, she was Nathan's carefully kept secret. Not because he was ashamed. Nathan had made that clear from their first kiss in his private office, after hours, when the cleaning crew had long gone home. My father, he'd said, his forehead pressed against hers, still thinks he runs this company. Any relationship I have becomes a 3-ring circus. Board meetings, shareholder concerns, media speculation. His hands had cupped her face. I won't put you through that, Claire. Not until I can protect you from all of it. She'd believed him. God help her. She'd believed every word. Claire Morgan, at 28, was confident, hungry, and absolutely unstoppable. She wore tailored navy suits, her dark hair swept into a flawless chignon, striding through Hastings Corporation's glass corridors with the assurance of someone who'd earned her place through sheer brilliance. The night before everything fell apart, Nathan had held her in his penthouse apartment, the city glittering below them like scattered diamonds. 6 more months, he'd whispered against her hair. Dad's talking about retirement. Once the transition is complete, once I'm fully in control. He'd pulled back to look at her, those blue eyes intense with promise. I'm going to make this right, Claire. Public. Real. Everything you deserve. 6 months became 6 hours. Thursday started like any other day. Claire arrived at 7:30, coffee in hand, ready to finalize the market analysis she'd been working on for weeks. The presentation was scheduled for 2 that afternoon, $17 million in potential savings if the board accepted her recommendations. At 10:15, Nathan's assistant Andrea burst into the analyst pit, her face pale. Conference room. All senior staff now. The room filled with whispers before Nathan appeared, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His tie was loosened. His eyes were hollowed. His hands shook slightly as he gripped the back of a chair. My father has had a massive stroke, he said, his voice cracking on the word massive. He's in critical condition at Mercy General. I'm going to be unreachable for the foreseeable future. All department heads report to Vivian Hastings until further notice. His eyes swept the room, but never landed on Claire, not even for a second. He was gone before anyone could respond, disappearing into the elevator with his mother and the family attorney. Claire waited. She wasn't worried. Not then. Nathan was in crisis. His father was dying. Of course, he couldn't acknowledge her in front of the entire senior staff. She texted him at lunch, I'm here if you need anything, day or night. No response. At 6 p.m., thinking of you. I love you. Nothing. At midnight, from her apartment, please let me know you're okay. Silence. 3 days of silence. 3 days of Claire showing up to work, delivering that presentation to a distracted board, going through the motions while her texts went unanswered and her calls went straight to voicemail. On day 4, she bought a pregnancy test on her lunch break. She'd been feeling off for a week, exhausted, nauseous in the mornings, too stressed to think clearly about what that might mean. But some part of her already knew. In the executive washroom at 2:30 in the afternoon, Claire stared at 2 pink lines that changed everything. Pregnant. Her hand moved instinctively to her still flat stomach. All the implications cascaded through her mind. Telling Nathan, their future, how this would accelerate everything. Maybe 6 months wouldn't be necessary anymore. Maybe a baby would be the catalyst that finally brought their relationship into the light. She'd actually smiled. That was at 2:45 p.m. on a Thursday. At 3:15 she was summoned to the executive floor, not to Nathan's office, to his mother. Vivian Hastings sat behind a mahogany desk that had probably cost more than Claire's annual salary. Perfectly composed in Chanel, her silver hair immaculate. She didn't stand when Claire entered, didn't offer a seat. Miss Morgan. Her voice could have frozen fire. I'll make this brief, as I have actual family matters to attend to. Claire remained standing, that pregnancy test still in her blazer pocket, its weight suddenly enormous. My son is inheriting a company in crisis, Vivian continued. His father is on life support. The board is circling like sharks. Nathan needs complete focus, complete control, and absolutely no distractions. The word distractions hit like a slap. Mrs. Hastings, I'm not interested in your explanations or your feelings. Vivian slid a manila envelope across the desk. Your severance package. Quite generous, actually. 6 months' salary, full benefits continuation through the end of the year, and an excellent reference letter. You'll find everything in order. Claire stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You're firing me. We're compensating you for your service to the company. What you do with that compensation is entirely your concern. Sign the non-disclosure agreement, take the money, and move on with your life. I need to speak to Nathan. My son doesn't need this right now. Vivian's smile was ice. He needs to focus on saving his father's legacy, not managing inappropriate workplace relationships. The words landed like physical blows. Inappropriate workplace relationships. As if what she and Nathan had shared was some sordid office affair instead of what? Love? Had it been love? Or had she been exactly what Vivian was implying? Claire's throat tightened, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of this woman. Her hand moved to her stomach, a protective gesture she immediately regretted when Vivian's sharp eyes caught the movement. The severance? Claire heard herself ask, her voice distant. Contingent on the NDA and your immediate departure. The agreement includes standard confidentiality provisions about your employment, but nothing that would prevent future business dealings with the company. We're not unreasonable, Miss Morgan. We simply require discretion about internal matters. Claire picked up the envelope. Inside were the severance agreement, the NDA with its careful legal language, and a check for 6 months of her salary. She read the NDA twice. Standard language about not disclosing proprietary information, trade secrets, or internal company matters. Nothing about her relationship with Nathan, because officially there was no relationship to disclose. She signed. What choice did she have? She needed that money, especially now. Claire placed her ID badge on the desk with a soft click. Tell Nathan. She paused, then shook her head. What was the point? He'd made his choice clear through 3 days of silence. Never mind. She walked out of Hastings Corporation at 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday, her desk already cleared by security, her access revoked, her entire professional life erased as if she'd never existed. The pregnancy test was still in her pocket. Claire made it to her apartment before the tears came. She sank onto her bathroom floor, one hand pressed protectively against her stomach, and finally let herself break. Great, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. She tried Nathan's phone one final time, straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. What was there to say? I'm pregnant. Your mother fired me. I just signed away my career and my dignity for 6 months' salary. Please call me back. No, That made her sound desperate, manipulative, exactly what Vivian had implied she was. The choice crystallized in that moment. Sitting on a cold bathroom tile, she could fight for a man who hadn't answered a single text in 3 days. Or she could build something for herself that no one could take away. Claire Morgan chose to disappear. She didn't know, couldn't possibly know at that moment, that Nathan's assistant had been screening all his communications, that Vivian had personally ensured no distractions reached her son, that Nathan thought Claire had chosen to leave, had accepted money to walk away from him during his darkest hour. She didn't know that her silence would cost him everything, and she didn't know that in 5 years, when those elevator doors opened, that cost would finally come due. 6 weeks after walking out of Hastings Corporation, Claire sat in her obstetrician's office, alone, filling out forms that asked for an emergency contact. She left that line blank. The ultrasound was supposed to be routine, her first real prenatal appointment. She'd been putting it off, too busy sending out resumes, too terrified of making the pregnancy feel real, while her bank account steadily dwindled and job interviews led nowhere. Dr. Sarah Chen, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and efficient movements, squeezed cold gel across Claire's still flat stomach and pressed the transducer against her skin. "Let's see what we've got here," Dr. Chen murmured, eyes on the screen. Then she went very still. Claire's heart stuttered. "What? What's wrong?" Dr. Chen turned the monitor toward her, a strange smile playing at her lips. "Nothing's wrong, exactly. But we need to recalibrate your entire birth plan." On the screen, 3 distinct gray blobs pulsed with rapid heartbeats. "That's baby A," Dr. Chen pointed. "Baby B and baby C, congratulations, Miss Morgan. You're having triplets." The room tilted. Claire heard herself laugh. A high, slightly hysterical sound that morphed into something between a sob and a giggle. "Triplets. 3 babies. 3 college funds. 3 of everything." "I'm unemployed," Claire said, still staring at the screen, at those 3 impossible heartbeats. "I'm single. I have maybe 4 months of savings left if I'm very careful. And I'm having 3 babies." The laughter bubbled up again, genuine this time, edged with something that might have been terror or might have been exhilaration, maybe both. "I'm either completely insane," she said, "or this is the universe telling me I was built for hard mode." Dr. Chen handed her tissues anyway. "For what it's worth, you strike me as someone who doesn't do anything halfway." Claire looked at those 3 heartbeats again. 3 tiny humans who would depend on her for everything. 3 reasons she couldn't afford to fall apart. "No," she said softly, her hand spreading across her stomach. "No, I really don't." That night, Claire sat cross-legged on her apartment floor, surrounded by articles she'd printed at the library. Articles about Nathan, about Hastings Corporation. The company was in crisis. Richard Hastings had died 2 weeks after Claire's dismissal. The stock had plummeted. A hostile takeover attempt was in progress. Nathan's face appeared in every business publication, looking increasingly exhausted as he fought to save his father's legacy. Her phone sat beside her. She'd deleted Nathan's contact information, but she still remembered the number. It would be so easy. 1 call, 1 text. "I'm pregnant with triplets. You're going to be a father." Her finger hovered over the phone. Then Vivian Hastings' words echoed. "Inappropriate workplace relationships. My son doesn't need this right now." Claire picked up another article. This one featured Vivian prominently, discussing her son's dedication to his father's memory, his unwavering focus on preserving the Hastings legacy. "Nathan has sacrificed everything personally for this company," Vivian was quoted. "That's the kind of commitment true leadership requires." Claire set down her phone and placed both hands on her stomach. "Okay," she whispered to them. "Okay, it's just us. But I promise you, we're going to be more than fine. We're going to be extraordinary." Whatever she built from here had to be hers alone. No one could dismiss it. No one could claim she'd used connections or relationships to succeed. No one could take it away. When Nathan Hastings finally learned about his children, if he ever did, It would be on her terms, when she was strong enough that nothing he said or did could break her. The freelance consulting started out of desperation and grew into something no one had predicted. Claire started small. Market analysis for startups that couldn't afford big firms, financial projections for local businesses, strategy consulting for entrepreneurs who operated out of coffee shops and co-working spaces. She worked from her apartment, her laptop balanced on her knees, fighting waves of nausea. The brutal reality hit her in waves, exhaustion so profound she'd fall asleep mid-sentence, fear that whispered she wasn't going to make it, determination that screamed she had no choice but to make it. At 7 months pregnant, massive with 3 babies, her ankles swollen, her back screaming, Claire landed her first major client, a tech startup called Meridian Solutions. The founder, Jessica Park, was a woman who'd bootstrapped her company from nothing and recognized hunger when she saw it. "I can't pay your full rate," Jessica said bluntly, "but I can offer equity. 5% of the company for 6 months of strategic consulting." Every business advisor would have told Claire to refuse. Equity in a startup was essentially worthless. Cash was king, especially with 3 babies on the way. Claire looked at Meridian's projections, looked at Jessica's track record, looked at the market opportunity they were targeting. Then she looked at her own bank account. 7%, Claire countered. "And I'll give you 9 months. You know most startups fail, right? That equity might never be worth anything." Claire smiled, one hand on her enormous belly. "I'm about to have triplets by myself. I'm an expert in impossible odds. 7%. And I'll make sure Meridian isn't part of that failure statistic." They agreed. By the time her water broke 6 weeks early, Meridian had secured series of funding. That worthless 7% would eventually be worth almost $9 million. The labor was brutal. 36 hours of it, with Claire's mother Mary holding one hand and her younger sister Rachel holding the other, both of them taking turns being her breathing coach, her advocate, her anchor. Ethan came first, screaming his outrage at the world. 5 pounds, 2 ounces of fury. Oliver followed 12 minutes later, quieter but watchful. 4 pounds, 15 ounces of cautious observation. Sophie arrived last, smallest and fiercest. 4 pounds, 8 ounces of pure determination. 6 weeks premature meant the NICU, meant machines and monitors and terrifying conversations about lung development and feeding tubes, meant Claire sleeping in a chair between 3 incubators, one hand reaching into each to let her babies know she was there. "You're Morgan's," she whispered to them on the worst night, when Sophie's oxygen levels kept dropping. "We won't quit. We don't break. We survive and then we thrive. You hear me? All 3 of you are fighters." Sophie's levels stabilized an hour later. That first year was a blur of feeding schedules and sleep deprivation and moments of pure terror. Claire learned to nurse 2 babies at once, while bottle feeding the third. Learned to function on 90-minute sleep cycles. Learned to work at 3 in the morning with a baby monitor beside her laptop. When Ethan had colic and screamed for 4 hours straight while she was on a client call, she put him in a carrier against her chest and kept working, swaying gently while analyzing market trends. By the time the triplets turned 1, Claire had equity positions in 7 companies. 3 had gone under. 4 were thriving. And she had accumulated enough capital to do something she'd been planning for 6 months. Morgan Strategic Partners launched on the triplets' first birthday. Not from a fancy office. Not with venture capital backing or business loans. From Claire's apartment, with a new website her sister had helped her build, with a business plan she'd refined during countless 3 a.m. feeding sessions. With a vision that had crystallized through a year of survival. The premise was simple but radical. She would consult only for female-founded startups and minority-led businesses. She would take partial payment in equity. She would be selective, investing her time and expertise only in companies she genuinely believed could transform their industries. By the time the triplets turned 3, Morgan Strategic Partners had a client roster of 12 companies. 8 were thriving. 2 had been acquired. 1 had gone public. Only 1 had failed. Claire's equity positions across her portfolio were now worth approximately $8 million. She'd moved out of the tiny apartment into a modest house with a real office and a backyard where 3 energetic toddlers could burn off energy. Then came the question she'd been dreading. It was a Saturday morning. Claire was making pancakes, a weekend tradition, while Ethan, Oliver, and Sophie sat at the kitchen table, coloring with the intense focus that 3-year-olds bring to important tasks. "Mama?" Ethan looked up. "Jacob at preschool has a daddy who picks him up sometimes," Oliver chimed in, not looking up from his drawing. "We don't have a daddy who picks us up." "Where's our daddy?" Sophie asked, cutting straight to the heart of it the way she always did. Claire turned off the stove and sat down at their level. She'd known this moment would come, had practiced this conversation in her head 100 times. "You have a daddy," she said, honestly, "but he doesn't live with us. He has a very big job that takes all his time. And right now, he doesn't know about you." "Why doesn't he know?" Oliver asked, his logical mind working through the problem. Claire chose her words carefully, because sometimes grown-ups make complicated decisions for complicated reasons. "When you're older, I'll explain all of it, but what you need to know right now is this. You 3 are the most loved children in the entire world. You have me and Grandma Mary and Aunt Rachel, and we are your family." "Are we enough?" Sophie asked, those blue eyes searching her face. "You 3 are everything," Claire said fiercely. "You are my whole world." Later that night, after bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, Claire stood in her office looking at her success, the client list, the portfolio, the reputation she'd built, and she wondered, was it enough? Those 3 pairs of blue eyes reminded her that some gaps couldn't be filled with professional success. Eventually, Nathan would have to know. The only question was when she'd be powerful enough that his response, whatever it was, couldn't destroy what she'd built. Between the triplets' 2nd and 4th birthdays, Morgan Strategic Partners went from a 1-woman operation run from a home office to a firm that made Wall Street take notice. Claire's investment philosophy was deceptively simple, but executing it required insight that couldn't be taught. Find overlooked value, add strategic expertise, build measurable worth, exit or hold, based on long-term potential rather than short-term pressure. Where traditional consulting firms charged premium fees for advice, Claire embedded herself in her portfolio companies. She took board seats. She made introductions. She restructured entire business models when necessary. By the end of year 4, assets under management had crossed $800 million. She'd built an empire while raising triplets, while doing school drop-offs and attending parent-teacher conferences, and being the room mom for 3 different preschool classes. The success wasn't abstract. It was built on specific wins. 3 stand out above the rest. Catalyst Biotech. Dr. Amara Okafor had developed a revolutionary drug delivery system, but couldn't get pharmaceutical companies to take her seriously. She'd been turned down by 47 VCs before someone mentioned Claire's name. Claire spent 1 week reviewing Amara's research, then took 12% equity and spent 4 months completely restructuring how Catalyst approached the market. Instead of competing with Big Pharma, Claire repositioned them as an acquisition target, a company so valuable that the giants would have to buy them. 18 months later, Catalyst was acquired for $380 million. Claire's 12% became worth $45.6 million. More importantly, Dr. Okafor's drug delivery system would now actually reach patients who needed it. Meridian Solutions. By year 3, Jessica Park's startup was struggling, growing too fast, bleeding cash, losing strategic focus. Claire looked at the numbers and prescribed brutal advice. Cut 40% of product features. Focus on the 20% that actually generated revenue. Restructure the entire sales strategy. Do it in 60 days. It was the kind of advice that ends consulting relationships. Jessica took a breath and said, "Okay, help me do it." 6 months later, Meridian was profitable for the first time. 12 months later, They were acquired for $127 million. Jessica sent Claire a text after the acquisition closed. You didn't just save my company. You taught me how to be the CEO it needed. That's worth more than the exit. Nexus Education. Maria Santos had built an education technology platform for underserved communities. Brilliant concept. Terrible execution. The company was 3 months from bankruptcy when Claire took the meeting. I don't think I can help you, Claire said honestly. Your burn rate is unsustainable, and you don't have enough runway to fix it. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Claire looked at this woman who'd invested everything, her savings, her time, her belief, and saw herself 5 years ago. Dismissed, desperate, determined. I didn't say I wouldn't help you, Claire said quietly. I said I don't think I can. But I'm willing to try if you're willing to make impossible choices. Nexus didn't just survive. It pivoted into a model so effective that 2 years later they were processing educational content for 400 school districts. The company was now valued at $200 million. This was Claire's strength, seeing potential where others saw risk. The opportunity appeared in Claire's email on a Tuesday morning, buried in a weekly digest of potential deals that her analyst Kelly compiled. Hastings Corporation seeking strategic advisory for market expansion. Claire's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. Kelly appeared in her office doorway, tablet in hand. Did you see the Hastings opportunity? Their stock has been stagnant for 3 years. The advisory fee alone would be substantial, and if we negotiate for equity positions in any acquisitions— I saw it, Claire interrupted. It's exactly the kind of turnaround challenge you're best at. I have history there. The words came out flat. What kind of history? I worked there. Briefly. Before Morgan Strategic Partners. It didn't end well. Kelly paused. Do you want me to pass on it? Claire pulled up Hastings Corporation's public financials. Nathan had saved the company after his father's death. The hostile takeover had failed, but then he'd gotten conservative, risk-averse. The company was stable but stagnant, throwing off steady profits but not growing, not innovating. It was the corporate equivalent of survival mode. Claire knew survival mode intimately. Schedule a preliminary call, she heard herself say. I want to understand the scope before making any decisions. You sure? No, but that's never stopped me before. The preliminary call was with Hastings Corporation's CFO and head of strategy, not Nathan. Claire confirmed that detail 3 times before agreeing to the meeting. Afterward, she sat in her office, staring at her notes. This was a business opportunity, a significant one, but her hand was shaking as she held her pen. This is a bad idea, said Rachel's voice from the doorway. Claire's sister had a key to the office, often stopping by after picking up the triplets from kindergarten. Claire, you've built something incredible without him. Why risk that? I'm not risking anything. This is business. Is it? Or is this about needing to know who he became? About needing him to see what you built? The words hit harder because they were true. 5 years ago, I walked away because I wasn't strong enough to face him, Claire said. Because anything he said or did could have destroyed me. Because I needed to build something that was completely mine. And you did. So why go back? Because I'm not the same person who left. Claire's voice was quiet, but certain. I'm not that dismissed employee anymore. I built an $800 million firm. I raised 3 incredible children by myself. I can walk into that building and be completely, professionally excellent. And if he learns about the triplets, then he learns about them when I'm powerful enough that his response doesn't matter. When I have resources to protect them. When I can't be dismissed or paid off or told I'm a distraction. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. This could blow up spectacularly. Most things worth doing can. Claire managed a small smile. I'm an expert in high-risk, high-reward scenarios, remember? She signed the contract that afternoon. The morning of the Hastings Corporation meeting started with a text message that threatened to derail everything. Claire was already dressed. The charcoal suit, carefully chosen accessories, her armor perfectly in place, when her phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. Sandra, Nanny. So sorry, Claire. Emergency with my mother. Can't make it today. Claire stood in her kitchen, coffee halfway to her lips, and felt the familiar weight of single parenthood crash down on her shoulders. Her mother was out of town. Rachel had a court appearance. The emergency childcare service would take hours to arrange. Mommy? Ethan appeared in the doorway, already dressed in the clothes she'd laid out the night before, his hair sticking up in 3 different directions. Why do you look worried? Before Claire could answer, a crash came from upstairs. Sophie took my tablet. Oliver's voice, shrill with outrage. I need it for important research. Sophie shouted back, You're looking at pictures of puppies. That's important. Claire closed her eyes. This was her life. This was always her life. One crisis layering on top of another, none of them caring about billion-dollar meetings. She made a decision that was either brilliant or catastrophic. How would you 3 like to come to Mommy's meeting? The fighting stopped immediately. The really important one? Oliver asked. With the big building you used to work at? Yes, but this is a serious grown-up business, which means absolutely your best behavior. No fighting, no loud voices, quiet activities only. Can you do that? We'll try, Ethan said honestly, which was more reassuring than a promise they couldn't keep. I can be so quiet, Sophie announced at full volume. That's not quiet, dummy, Oliver muttered. You're the dummy. Nobody's a dummy, Claire interrupted. Everybody get your tablets, headphones, and your absolute best behavior. We leave in 45 minutes. Later, Kelly called. Claire explained the situation. Kelly was quiet for a long moment. You're bringing your children to meet their father for the first time, and he doesn't know they're his children, and this is happening during a business meeting. When you say it like that, it sounds insane. It is insane. Kelly's voice softened. But maybe it's also the most honest thing you could do. You've spent 5 years being this incredible professional and this dedicated mother, but you've kept them completely separate. Maybe it's time to let those worlds collide. You're allowed to be both. Claire looked at herself in the hallway mirror. Charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, hair sleek and professional. The armor she'd chosen for this confrontation. But upstairs, reality was happening. 3 children who couldn't go 45 minutes without fighting, who were proof that her life was messy and complicated and nothing like the controlled image she projected. Maybe that was okay. Maybe walking into Hastings Corporation with all her complicated reality on display was exactly what she needed to do. Not revenge, not performance, just the complete, unvarnished truth of who she'd become. The Hastings Corporation building looked exactly the same. Sleek glass and steel rising 42 stories above the city. The lobby with its marble floors and modern art installations. Now she approached as a visitor. 3 children holding her hands, their eyes wide as they took in the soaring ceiling and the waterfall feature along one wall. Wow, Ethan breathed. This is fancy. The security guard checked her ID. Ms. Morgan? You're expected on the executive floor. 42nd floor, conference room B. The 42nd floor, of course. Claire accepted the visitor badges. One for her, tiny ones for each of the triplets that they wore with solemn pride, and headed toward the elevators. The doors opened. She ushered the children inside, pressing the button for the 42nd floor. Mommy, Sophie whispered as the elevator began to rise. Your heart is beating really fast. I'm a little nervous, sweetheart. This is a very important meeting. You'll be great, Oliver said with absolute certainty. You're always great at meetings. The smartest boss, Ethan added. Claire managed to smile, pulling all 3 of them closer as the elevator climbed. Each floor felt like a heartbeat. 10th floor. The last time she'd been in this building, she'd been pregnant and didn't know it yet. 20th floor. She'd signed an NDA and walked away from everything. 30th floor. She'd built an entire life in the years since. 40th floor. Those 3 lives were standing beside her right now. 41st floor. In seconds, she would see Nathan Hastings for the first time in 5 years. 42nd floor. Everything was about to change. The elevator slowed. Claire straightened, her hand instinctively smoothing Sophie's hair, adjusting Oliver's collar. "Remember?" she whispered. "Quiet." And the doors slid open. Nathan Hastings was standing 15 feet from the elevator, mid-conversation with his CFO, a folder in his hands. He looked up at the sound of the elevator doors. Their eyes met. For one impossible second, Claire saw recognition dawn in those blue eyes. She watched him register her presence, watched his professional smile start to form for the visiting consultant he was expecting. Then his gaze dropped to the children clustered around her legs. Nathan Hastings, CEO of a billion-dollar corporation, a man who'd spent 5 years building and protecting his father's legacy, froze completely as he saw 3 identical faces looking back at him with his own eyes. One child with those eyes might be a coincidence. 3 identical children with those eyes, standing next to Claire Morgan, was impossible to misunderstand. Nathan's voice came out rough, broken. "I need a moment." His eyes had found Claire's again, and the question in them was raw, desperate, completely stripped of any professional veneer. Claire lifted her chin slightly, met his gaze directly, and gave the smallest nod. "Yes, they're yours." Nathan's phone clattered to the marble floor. What followed was one of the most surreal 2 hours of Claire's professional life. She delivered her presentation on emerging market opportunities with surgical precision. Her analysis of where Hastings Corporation was positioned versus where it could be. Her recommendations for strategic pivots that would unlock growth. She was brilliant. The research was impeccable, the insights sharp, the strategic vision exactly what a stagnant company needed. And the entire time, Nathan Hastings sat across from her, asking intelligent questions, taking notes, engaging professionally, while 3 children who looked exactly like him colored quietly in the corner, utterly unaware that the room around them had been permanently rearranged. But before the presentation, there had been 15 minutes alone, after the children had been taken for hot chocolate. "Tell me everything," Nathan said. "From the beginning, please." Claire told him all of it. His mother's office, the severance, the NDA, the 3 days of silence that had preceded everything. The pregnancy test she'd taken after she'd already been dismissed. The calculation she'd made on her bathroom floor. "Why didn't you tell me?" Nathan asked. "I tried to reach you for 3 days before your mother's office," Claire said. "None of those messages got through. And afterward, you were drowning in corporate warfare. I would appear, the dismissed employee claiming to be pregnant with your children, looking exactly like what your mother had called me. An inappropriate distraction trying to complicate your life. My mother told me you'd resigned, that you'd accepted a generous package and moved on." Nathan's hands were shaking visibly. "I was hurt that you'd left during the worst crisis of my life, but I thought it was your choice." "It wasn't my choice," Claire said quietly. The silence that followed was heavy. Within 5 years, my mother manipulated both of us, Nathan said finally. "She made you think I'd abandoned you. She made me think you'd chosen to leave." He stood and moved to the window, his back to her, his shoulders rising and falling with deep breaths. When he turned back, the professional mask was gone. "Those children. Tell me about them." "They're yours," Claire said simply. "Same eyes, same stubborn determination. Ethan's a natural leader. Oliver's analytical like you. Sophie's pure force of will. They're happy, healthy, loved. They ask about their father sometimes. And I've always told them the truth, that you didn't know about them, but that doesn't mean you wouldn't love them if you did." "I already do." Nathan's voice was rough with emotion. "I looked at them for 30 seconds, and I already—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "I know," Claire said softly. "I felt the same way when I saw 3 heartbeats on that first ultrasound." He straightened. "What do you want, Claire?" "Why now?" "Childcare fell through this morning," Claire said with brutal honesty. "This meeting was supposed to be controlled, professional. But to answer your real question, my children deserve to know their father, and I needed to know if you'd grown into someone worthy of them." "And?" His eyes met hers. "Have I? I don't know yet," Claire said honestly. "The Nathan I knew 5 years ago would have fought for me. I would have questioned when I disappeared, would have pushed past his mother's manipulations. That Nathan was weak, he said quietly. He let other people control his life. He chose duty over the woman he loved. He failed you in every way that mattered. And this, Nathan, someone who spent 5 years wondering what happened to you. Someone who built a stable, successful company but lost something essential in the process. His voice broke slightly. Someone who's looking at 3 children who are half mine and realizing that every achievement of the past 5 years is meaningless compared to what I missed. I don't expect you to have answers today, Claire said. I don't expect you to suddenly become a father to children you've known for 15 minutes. But I can promise they'll matter more to you than anything else, if you let them. Tell me what I need to do, Nathan said, and I'll do it. First, you need to meet them properly. Second, we need legal agreements, custody arrangements, financial support, all of it formalized. Third, Claire's voice softened. You need to understand that this is terrifying for me. Letting you into their lives means giving up control, means trusting that you won't hurt them the way I hurt you, Nathan finished quietly. I know. Okay, she said finally. We can try, slowly, carefully, with their emotional well-being as the absolute priority. Then she brought them back in and knelt down to the children's level. Remember how you asked about your father? This is him. His name is Nathan. 3 5-year-olds studied this tall man with their eyes. Sophie stepped forward and touched his tie with curious fingers. Are you our daddy? She asked. Nathan looked at Claire. When she nodded, he looked back at Sophie. Yes, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I'm your daddy. And meeting you 3 is the most important thing that's ever happened to me. Sophie's next question was devastating in its innocence. If you're our daddy, why are you crying? Because I'm happy. And a little bit sad. Happy because I get to meet you, but sad because I missed so much time already. It's okay, Sophie said with the easy forgiveness of the children. You're here now. Ethan extended his hand, with the gravity of someone much older. You can try being our dad. But if you make Mommy cry, we won't like you anymore. Nathan shook his son's hand solemnly. That's fair. 3 days later, Nathan invited his mother to dinner at his penthouse. Vivian Hastings arrived promptly at 7, impeccably dressed as always. She'd been asking about Nathan's recent distraction, his unusual requests for cleared schedule blocks. We need to have a conversation about decisions you made 5 years ago, Nathan said. He laid out 3 file folders. He told her about Claire, about the pregnancy she hadn't known about the 3 children who were 5 years old and whom he'd just met. Vivian's face went white. I was protecting you, she said immediately. She was pregnant, Nathan said, his voice quiet and hard. When you paid her off, when you made her sign that NDA, she was pregnant with my children. Triplets. 3 children who are now 5 years old, and who I just met 3 days ago. The color drained from Vivian's face. If she'd been pregnant, she would have. Why would she? Nathan's anger was controlled, but fierce. You told her she was an inappropriate distraction. You offered her money to leave. You made it clear that I needed to focus on the company without complications. Why would she then tell you she was carrying my children? I didn't know. No. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't care. He opened the folder revealing copies of the severance agreement, the NDA, the communication logs. You intercepted every attempt she made to contact me. You told me she'd resign voluntarily. You told her I didn't want to be contacted. I was protecting you. From what? From love? From family? From the woman who would have stood by me through the worst crisis of my life if you'd given her the chance? Vivian stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Your father was dying. The board was circling. A relationship with an employee, a secret relationship, would have been ammunition for your enemies. So you eliminate the ammunition by eliminating her. I thought I was helping. You were helping yourself. Nathan's tone was brutal. He opened the 3rd folder. Photos of Ethan, Oliver, and Sophie. Individual portraits, recent, showing 3 beautiful children with Hastings' blue eyes. These are your grandchildren, who you've never met, Who doesn't know you exist? Who has a mother who built an $800 million firm by herself while raising them alone because you decided she wasn't good enough for our family? Tears were running down Vivian's face. The first time Nathan had seen his mother cry since his father's funeral. What do I do? How do I fix this? I'm not sure you can, Nathan said bluntly, but you can start by acknowledging the mistake. By understanding that your need for control cost me 5 years with my children. By recognizing that Claire Morgan was never a problem to be solved. She was a person who deserved respect and honesty. I want to meet them. My grandchildren, please. That's not my decision alone. Claire gets equal say. She's been their only parent for 5 years. She's earned the right to protect them from anyone she doesn't trust. How do I earn it? By actually helping instead of controlling. By respecting Claire's boundaries instead of trying to manage her. By understanding that you don't get to buy your way into these children's lives. You have to prove you've changed. I have changed. I will change. Nathan looked at his mother's tear-stained face and saw something he'd rarely witnessed, genuine remorse, not regretting being caught, but actual understanding of the damage she'd caused. I'll talk to Claire, he said finally, but if she says no, that's final. And if you get a chance and you manipulate or try to manage her life again, you'll lose access to all of us. I won't let you hurt her or the children again. I understand. 6 months after that conference room revelation, Claire stood in the botanical gardens watching Vivian Hastings pace nervously near the rose garden entrance. The gardens were Claire's choice for the first meeting between Vivian and her grandchildren. Public enough that there would be witnesses if things went poorly. Beautiful enough that the children would be happy. Neutral territory that belonged to neither of their worlds. Before the garden meeting, Vivian had done something Claire hadn't expected. She'd written a letter, not typed, not dictated to an assistant, handwritten on personal stationery, delivered to Claire's office a week before the scheduled meeting. Claire had read it 3 times, looking for manipulation or justification or the carefully worded non-apologies that powerful people were famous for. Instead, she'd found something raw and honest. Vivian wrote about her terror when Richard had his stroke, about how controlling Nathan's life had given her purpose and identity, about seeing Claire as a threat to the carefully constructed world that protected her from feeling powerless. I underestimated you in every possible way, Vivian had written. Thought you were a young woman who'd gotten involved with her boss, not a brilliant strategist who would build an empire from nothing. Thought you'd take the money and disappear, not carry my grandchildren, and raise them into extraordinary people without any support. Thought you were a complication to manage, not the woman my son loved and needed. The letter didn't ask for forgiveness. It simply acknowledged harm and committed to doing better. Claire had folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. Not forgiveness, but acknowledged that Vivian was at least trying to understand. Now, watching Vivian interact with the triplets in the botanical gardens, Claire saw that effort continue. Vivian didn't try to buy the children's affection with expensive gifts or grand gestures. She'd brought a simple book about gardens and read it to them on a bench, her voice gentle, her attention completely focused on 3 children who occasionally interrupted with questions. After an hour, Nathan took the children to the butterfly garden, leaving Claire and Vivian alone. They're remarkable, Vivian said quietly. You've done an extraordinary job raising them. I had help, Claire said. My mother, my sister. I wasn't completely alone. But you were alone in the ways that mattered most. Alone making impossible decisions. Alone carrying the weight of 3 lives. Claire glanced at her, surprised by the specificity. I've talked to other mothers of multiples, Vivian admitted. I tried to understand what you went through, so I could comprehend the magnitude of what I took from you. You took Nathan, Claire said bluntly. You took the father of my children, the support I needed. But you didn't take my capability or my determination. Those were always mine. I underestimated you, Vivian said. Thought you were a complication to manage, not a force to be reckoned with. That was my fundamental mistake, not seeing you as a complete person worthy of respect. Most people don't, Claire said. Women in business are used to being underestimated. Young mothers are dismissed as distracted. I was both, but I made myself impossible to ignore. Then, why are you here? Vivian asked. Why give me this chance? Because those 3 children deserve every healthy relationship available to them. Because carrying resentment is exhausting. And because I'm practical. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. How do I make it right? You can't, Claire said. There is no action that will give me back the pregnancy I experienced alone, or give Nathan back the first 5 years of his children's lives. That time is gone. She paused. But you can try moving forward differently. You can be a grandmother who shows up, who respects boundaries, who adds value to those children's lives without trying to control them. You can be someone they trust, slowly, over time. That's all I want. Is it? Claire's voice sharpened slightly. Because in 5 years, when those children are teenagers making choices you don't approve of, will you still respect boundaries? Or will you revert to the woman who solves problems with money and manipulation? I don't know, Vivian said, and the honesty was startling. I want to promise that I've changed completely, but I'm 63 years old with deeply ingrained patterns. What I can promise is that I'm aware of those patterns now, that I'll try to catch myself. Claire studied this woman who'd caused so much damage, now standing on a terrace looking smaller and older than she ever had in the conference room 5 years ago. That's a start, Claire said. Not redemption, not absolution, but a start. 1 year after the Botanical Garden meeting, the Hastings Corporation annual charity gala glittered with the city's most powerful business leaders. Ethan, Oliver, and Sophie, now 6 years old, had begged to come. Nathan had made a compelling argument. Let them see this world. Let them understand what their father does. Let them know they belong in spaces like this. So Claire had dressed 3 children in age-appropriate formal wear and prepared them for a long evening with strategic snacks and quiet activities for boring adult moments. Vivian had also changed over the past year. She'd attended every birthday party, every school performance, every major event in the Triplets' lives, had shown up consistently, respected Claire's boundaries, and slowly earned the title of Grandma Vivian. Not perfect. There'd been moments where old patterns emerged, attempts to buy expensive gifts that Claire vetoed, suggestions about proper education that Claire shut down. But Vivian had caught herself each time, had apologized. I tried again. Now Claire watched as Grandma Vivian knelt down to fix Sophie's dress, laughing at something Ethan said, listening attentively to Oliver's explanation of the gala's fundraising strategy. She's really trying, Rachel observed, appearing beside Claire with champagne. I didn't think she had it in her. People are capable of change when the consequences are significant enough, Claire said. She chose her grandchildren over her need for control. That's not nothing. Later that evening, after the children had been delivered to Claire's mother for a sleepover, Nathan found Claire on the terrace, overlooking the city. I've fallen in love with you all over again, he said simply. Or maybe I never stopped loving you, and I'm just now in a position where I can admit it. We're co-parents, Claire said carefully. We've built something good for the children. We shouldn't complicate that. Is it complicated? Or is it the natural evolution of 2 people who care about each other, who've built trust over a year of showing up, who already share the most important parts of their lives? Claire looked at this man who'd broken her heart 5 years ago, and spent the past year proving he'd learned from that failure. I don't know if I can trust this, she admitted. What if your company has another crisis? What if something happens and you revert to the man who disappeared instead of the man who shows up? Those are fair questions, Nathan said, and I can't promise I'll be perfect. I can only promise that I've learned what matters, that I won't make the same mistakes twice, that I'll choose you and our children over corporate pressure or anything else that asks me to be less than present. Ask me again in a year, she said finally. If you're still showing up, Still putting the children first. Still proving that this version of you is permanent. Ask me then. Nathan's smile was slow and genuine. I can work with that. It's not. It's prove it first. Even better. I'm excellent at proving things. He stepped closer. Not touching, but near enough that Claire could feel his warmth. Fair warning. I'm going to spend the next year making you fall in love with me again. I never said I'd fallen out of love with you, Claire corrected. I said I don't know if I can trust it. There's a difference. Then I'll spend the next year proving you can. As Claire drove home that night, she thought about Vivian's transformation. Imperfect, but genuine. Built on consistent effort rather than grand gestures. She thought about Nathan's year of showing up. She thought about her 3 children, happy and secure, growing up with a father who'd learned the hard way that presence mattered more than perfection. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. The kids are asking if I can come to pancake breakfast tomorrow. I know it's Sunday, and technically not my day, but Claire smiled and typed back, pancakes at 9. Don't be late. I wouldn't dream of it. I'm excellent at showing up now. So I've noticed. 1 year. Keep proving it. Every single day, he promised. Claire set down her phone and looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back had survived impossible things, had built extraordinary things, had learned when to protect herself and when to risk vulnerability. Maybe could eventually become yes. But first, Nathan had 365 more days to prove that the man who showed up was the man he'd remain. Claire was practical enough to require proof, and patient enough to wait for it. 2 years after walking back into Hastings Corporation with 3 children in tow, Claire Morgan stood backstage at the National Women's Business Leadership Conference, checking her presentation slides one final time. When the conference organizer had first invited her to speak, the proposed topic had been From Dismissal to Empire, a revenge success story. Claire had pushed back immediately. It's not a revenge story, she'd said. Revenge requires holding on to pain. What I did was transform pain into purpose. There's a difference. That's an even better message, the organizer had replied. Can you teach that distinction? Now, standing in the wings while the moderator introduced her, Claire felt the weight of what she was about to share. This wasn't just a business presentation. This was the distillation of 7 years of survival, building, and choosing growth over bitterness. The applause swelled as she walked onto the stage. Claire stood at the podium, looking out at 800 women, entrepreneurs, executives, professionals at every stage of their career. She saw young faces eager for inspiration, middle-aged faces seeking validation, older faces nodding with the wisdom of their own battles. I was invited here to share a revenge success story, Claire began. The narrative goes like this. A woman gets dismissed from her job while pregnant, builds a billion-dollar company out of spite, returns triumphantly to prove everyone wrong. It's compelling. It's dramatic. It's also incomplete. She clicked to her first slide, a single sentence in bold text. Revenge requires holding on to pain. Success requires letting it go. 7 years ago, I was a senior analyst at a prestigious investment firm. I was excellent at my job. I was also in a relationship with the CEO. Secret, but serious. When his father had a stroke and the company faced a crisis, I was asked to leave. Given a severance package, made to sign an NDA, dismissed as an inappropriate distraction. The room was completely silent. I was also pregnant with triplets, though I didn't know that yet. So the choice became, fight to stay in a place that didn't want me, or build something that could never be taken away. I chose the latter. She clicked to the next slide, a photo of 3 tiny preemies in NICU incubators, her hands reaching into each one. These are Ethan, Oliver, and Sophie, at 3 weeks old, born 6 weeks premature. They're my real success. Not the company I built. Not the assets I manage. These 3 humans who are now 7 years old, thriving, brilliant, and completely unaware that their existence once felt impossible. She heard sniffles in the audience. I tell you this not for sympathy, but for context. Because the question I'm asked most often is, how did you get revenge on the people who dismissed you? And my answer is, I didn't. Claire moved away from the podium, walking to the edge of the stage. Revenge would have been holding on to anger, using my success as a weapon, building my company with the singular purpose of making the people who hurt me feel small. But I learned that building. Something out of anger creates a foundation that crumbles the moment the anger fades. And anger always fades. It's exhausting to maintain. It poisons everything it touches. It makes you smaller, not larger. She clicked to a new slide. Build something so undeniable it speaks for itself. So instead of revenge, I chose transformation. I took the pain of being dismissed and used it as data. What did it tell me? That I was underestimated. That traditional power structures couldn't see my value. That I needed to build something where my competence was undeniable. She clicked a slide showing her current team, diverse faces, brilliant minds, people who'd been overlooked by traditional firms. The most powerful thing you can do isn't to punish the people who underestimated you. It's to prove them wrong so completely that they must reevaluate their entire framework for recognizing talent. The applause started quietly, then built. Claire held up a hand. But there's a second part to this lesson, and it's equally important. She clicked a photo of Claire and Nathan, both in business attire, reviewing documents together at a conference table. Professional, collaborative, equal. This is Nathan Hastings, CEO of Hastings Corporation. He's also the father of my children. He's also the person whose company dismissed me 7 years ago. She let that sink in. 2 years ago, I took Hastings Corporation as a client. Not for revenge, not to gloat, but because they needed strategic help, and I'm exceptional at providing it. We now have a professional relationship built on mutual respect and clear boundaries. She clicked a quote on the screen. We got here through honest conversation, not retribution. In practice, that meant I told Nathan exactly how his mother's actions had impacted me. He listened without defending or justifying. He acknowledged the harm. He committed to doing better. And then, most importantly, he actually did better, consistently. For 2 years and counting. Her voice softened slightly. That doesn't erase the past, doesn't make the pain I experienced disappear, but it demonstrates that people can change if they're genuinely willing to do the work, and holding on to anger at someone who's genuinely changed, that's just punishing yourself. She clicked to a final slide. Never underestimate anyone else. The person you dismiss today might be the billionaire you pitch to tomorrow. The employee you overlook might be the CEO who transforms your industry. The young mother struggling to balance career and family might be the strategic advisor who saves your company. Claire's eyes swept the room. So the lesson isn't about revenge. It's about this. Build something undeniable. Transform your pain into purpose. Give people the chance to do better when they demonstrate genuine change, and never underestimate anyone else, because you know how that feels. The standing ovation started before she finished speaking. After her presentation, a young woman approached, mid-20s, visibly pregnant, wearing a suit that was professional but clearly not expensive. She'd been hovering at the edge of the group that had surrounded Claire, waiting. Ms. Morgan? I'm Amanda Torres. I'm 4 months pregnant. Single. I just got my MBA, but the job I was supposed to start rescinded the offer when they found out about the pregnancy. Her voice cracked slightly. Your speech was about not holding on to anger, but right now I'm so angry I can barely breathe. How did you let it go? Claire looked at this young woman standing exactly where she'd been 7 years ago. Pregnant, dismissed, furious at the unfairness of it all. I didn't let it go immediately, Claire said honestly. I was angry for a long time, angry at being dismissed, angry at having to do everything alone, but I realized the anger was taking up space that I needed for other things, space for strategy, for building, for being present with my children. I didn't let go of it because it was the noble thing to do. I let go of it because it was practical. Carrying that weight was exhausting, and I needed my energy for survival. Amanda nodded slowly. But the important part, Claire continued, is that I let go of the anger and kept the lesson. Every time someone underestimates me now, I remember. And I use that memory to fuel better choices, not bitter ones. Did you ever regret having them? Amanda asked quietly. In those really hard moments, did you ever wish you'd made different choices? Not once, Claire said firmly. Not a single time. Were there moments that were brutally hard? Absolutely. Moments I cried from exhaustion? More than I can count. But regret? Never. Those 3 children are the best thing I've ever built. Everything else, the company, the success, the reputation, that's just what I did while raising them. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Claire pulled a business card from her bag and wrote her personal cell number on the back. Call me if you need advice. Business advice, parenting advice, or just someone who understands what you're going through. And send me your resume. I'm always looking for talented people who understand resilience. Really? Really. You're getting an MBA while pregnant and dealing with employment discrimination. That's exactly the kind of person I want on my team. Claire sat in her rental car outside the conference center, her hands still gripping the steering wheel, the adrenaline from the presentation slowly fading. 800 women had given her a standing ovation. Dozens had approached her afterward with their own stories of dismissal, transformation, survival. Amanda Torres had her resume and a job interview scheduled for next week. But what struck Claire most was the weight that had lifted during that speech. For 7 years, she'd carried the story of her dismissal like armor, proof that she could survive anything, evidence that being underestimated was fuel rather than limitation. It had protected her, driven her, shaped every decision she'd made. And today, she'd finally set it down, not forgotten, not erased, but transformed from something that defined her into something that informed her. There was a difference. Claire pulled out her phone and opened her photos, scrolling back through 7 years of memories in reverse. Present day, a photo from this morning. Nathan crouched at the Natural History Museum with 3 8-year-olds clustered around him, all of them peering at a dinosaur fossil with identical expressions of concentration. Last month, the triplets' 8th birthday party in Claire's backyard. Vivian helping Sophie blow out candles while Ethan and Oliver photobombed the picture, Nathan's arm casually around Claire's shoulder. 1 year ago, Claire signed the partnership agreement that officially made Nathan a strategic advisor to Morgan Strategic Partners. Their professional collaboration formalized, boundaries clear, mutual respect evident. 2 years ago, the first photo of all 5 of them together, awkward, tentative, taken by Rachel at a park. 3 children who barely knew their father. 2 adults trying to figure out CO parenting. Everyone's smiles slightly forced. 5 years ago, Morgan's Strategic Partners office opening. Modest space, just Claire and Kelly, but the sign on the door representing everything she'd built from nothing. 6 years ago, the triplets' 2nd birthday. Claire's dining room converted to party central, her mother and sister helping. No father in any of the photos because he didn't know they existed yet. 7 years ago, 3 tiny infants in NICU incubators. Claire's hands reaching into each one, her face exhausted but determined, alone but unbroken. 7 years ago, the severance agreement on Vivian's desk. Claire's hand placing her ID badge down with quiet dignity, walking away from Hastings Corporation for what she thought was the last time. Claire closed the Photos app, her vision blurring slightly. That woman, the one who'd placed her ID on the desk and walked away, wouldn't recognize the life she'd built, wouldn't believe that the impossible had become not just possible, but real. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Where are you? Kids are getting restless, and I promised them you'd be here for ice cream negotiations. Claire smiled, wiping her eyes, and started the car. Time to go meet her family. The Natural History Museum was crowded on a Saturday afternoon. Families everywhere, children's voices echoing off the high ceilings, the organized chaos of weekend parenting. Claire found them in the paleontology wing, exactly where Nathan had said they'd be. The scene stopped her in her tracks. Nathan was crouched down to the children's level in front of a massive T-Rex skeleton, his suit jacket discarded, his tie loosened. Completely focused, on what Oliver was explaining with the intense seriousness that 8-year-olds brought to important topics. And the fossilization process takes millions of years, Oliver was saying, his hands gesturing animatedly, which means this dinosaur died before humans even existed, which proves that time is relative, and also that Ethan is wrong about everything. I'm not wrong about everything, Ethan protested. I'm just saying that if dinosaurs were so great, they wouldn't be extinct. That's survival bias, Oliver countered. Just because something doesn't survive doesn't mean it wasn't successful. Right, Dad? The word dad was casual now. Natural, completely unremarkable to 3 children who'd spent the past 2 years building a relationship with their father, 1 museum visit, 1 homework session, 1 dinosaur debate at a time. But it still made Claire's chest tighten with emotion. Sophie had stopped listening to her brother's argument and was holding Nathan's hand, swinging it gently while examining the dinosaur with an artist's eye. I think she was beautiful, Sophie announced, even though she's just bones now. You can tell she was beautiful when she was alive. How can you tell? Nathan asked, genuinely curious. Because she's big and strong and she survived for millions of years. That makes her beautiful, even if people only see the scary parts. Nathan caught Claire's eye over Sophie's head, and she knew he was thinking the same thing. Their daughter had just accidentally described her mother. Nathan straightened when he saw Claire approaching, his entire face lighting up with a smile that was unguarded and genuine. Not the CEO's smile, not the professional mask, just happiness at seeing her. This wasn't the man who'd failed her 7 years ago. The one who'd disappeared into crisis management, who'd let his mother manipulate their lives, who'd chosen duty over love. This was the man who'd worked to become better, who'd shown up every Wednesday for dinner, even when the children were difficult and the conversation was awkward, who'd learned to braid Sophie's hair by watching tutorials at midnight, who'd coached Ethan's soccer team despite knowing nothing about soccer, who'd spent hours helping Oliver build a functioning volcano for the science fair, who'd earned the title Dad through 1,000 small moments of being present. Mommy! All 3 children spotted her simultaneously and rushed over, their voices overlapping in typical triplet chaos. Did you finish your big speech? Dad said we could get ice cream if you said yes. I found the coolest fossil, and Dad took a picture to show you. Claire knelt down and opened her arms, gathering all 3 of them into a hug that was messy and perfect and everything that mattered. She stood, meeting Nathan's eyes over their children's heads. Good speech, he asked quietly. Important speech, she corrected. I talked about transformation versus revenge, about building something undeniable, about letting go of anger when people genuinely work to do better. Sounds like a speech I should read. I'll send you the slides. Claire, Nathan started, but Sophie interrupted. Can we go get ice cream now? You said yes, which means we should go immediately before you change your mind. I'm not going to change my mind, Claire said, laughing. Come on, let's go. As they walked toward the museum exit, 3 children racing ahead, Nathan and Claire following at a more measured pace, Claire caught sight of their reflection in the massive glass windows overlooking the museum courtyard. 5 people, a family, not traditional, not perfect, built from broken pieces and held together by honest effort and consistent showing up, but real, undeniably, completely real. What are you thinking? Nathan asked, noticing her pause. Claire studied the reflection, herself at 35, successful and strong and no longer defined by what had broken her. Nathan, learning daily how to be the father and partner he'd failed to be before. 3 children who were happy and secure and completely unaware that their family structure had once seemed impossible. I'm thinking about who I was 7 years ago, Claire said slowly. The woman who walked out of Hastings Corporation. She was strong, but she was also broken, determined, but also terrified, building armor to protect herself from ever being hurt like that again. And now? Now I don't need the armor. I built something so complete that external validation became unnecessary. I didn't return for revenge. I returned completely, and that made all the difference. Nathan was quiet for a moment. You know what I see when I look at you? What? Someone who took the worst thing that happened to her and used it to become the best version of herself. Not despite the pain, but because of how you transformed it. You didn't let being dismissed define you. You let it refine you. That's almost poetic. For a man who panicked about dinosaur debates. I contain multitudes, Nathan said with mock dignity. Then, more seriously, thank you. For what? For giving me the chance to earn my place in this family. For not letting my past mistakes determine my future. For showing me what actual strength looks like. Claire looked at him. Really looked at him. You earned it, Nathan. Every single day for 2 years you earned it. That's why it works. Dad, Mommy, the ice cream place is this way. Sophie's voice carried across the museum lobby. Coming, they called in unison. As they walked toward their children, Claire took one last look at her reflection in the glass. She didn't see the dismissed employee anymore. Didn't see the single mother surviving on determination and stubbornness. She saw who she'd become. Complete, powerful, at peace, with the complicated, imperfect, beautiful family she'd built from absolutely nothing. The greatest power isn't revenge. It's transformation. When underestimated, don't waste energy punishing short-sightedness. Build something undeniable. Success isn't about making others small. It's about becoming so complete that external validation becomes unnecessary. But equally, never underestimate anyone. Treat everyone with dignity. The person you dismiss today might be the force that transforms your world tomorrow. True strength is shown not in wielding power over those who wronged you, but in building purpose from pain, choosing growth over grudges, and creating space for imperfect people to earn redemption. The best revenge is building a life so full, so rich, so complete, that the past becomes merely prologue to something extraordinary. Claire Morgan had been broken 7 years ago, and from those broken pieces, she'd built an empire, a family, and a life that was undeniably, completely, powerfully her own. She didn't return for revenge. She returned completely, and that made all the difference.